He's got Myers. Myers gets walloped on the way down to the 21-yard line. This hit. Last moment, able to get it over to Dobbins, but again, the Raiders are everywhere.
Welcome to the Put On Waivers Media Group, home of the Put On Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
Welcome everybody to the glorious episode of the Put On Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Ryan Holmes, and we are podcasting on the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. PORSBR is my Twitter handle, and Ryan Holmes is RHOLM22. Ryan, how you doing today?
Doing good. I'll be doing better tomorrow once this heat wave breaks and we get back into the 70s.
Well, ours broke.
Can't wait for the heat to be gone.
Yeah, ours broke a little bit earlier, so everybody was feeling a little bit better. It felt more like, Southern California, if you will. So next week, I have when we do a show, it's gonna be live and it's gonna be on Twitter at the same time. So you can watch. So those who watch us on YouTube continue to do that, but then it'll also be on Twitter live, so you can watch. So when you're on your phone scrolling, you can watch Twitter. Watch us on Twitter. Do the same show live as well. So that'd be something that'd be cool for everybody. I know some people have been asking me about it, so now I figured I will kind of get that going for you. The Raiders lose to the Chargers 22-10. We'll talk about a lot of issues with the Raiders had in this game, but first a couple all 22 situations here. Ryan does a great job every week of breaking down some all 22 videos, so we're gonna kind of go over that real quick. We have a first one we have is a 10-yard 1st and 10 play action with Minshew hitting Davante Adams on a dig route.
Yeah, as you can see that they line up in trips to the left and obviously have the back set off to the right. And you see, I believe it's Tucker. I'm trying to look at my phone here, but Tucker comes in motion. He's going to kind of try to hold that backside corner. It's a play action to the running back going to the left. But what you really have here is the two-man route. You have Myers, who's lining up at the number 2. He is running up the seam and then into a post or a flag. And he's pulling those safeties out of there, which is going to open up the area for Davante Adams, who's running a dig route. So Davante Adams comes wide open. You'd like to hopefully see Minshew hit him in stride a little bit more. You see Davante has to slow down just a bit, but it still turns into a big game for the Raiders. When the Raiders did use play action, they were able to shore up the pass protection and give Minshew some time to work the ball down the field. When they didn't have nearly the same type of success. But Davante is really good at running these inside dig routes and getting leverage on these corners. And then obviously when the safeties pull out of there, the whole thing just opens wide open for him.
And we got Christian Wilkins just being everywhere. We're doing Christian Wilkins things here on the inside.
Yeah, Wilkins was a terror in this game against the run. He's lined up here. This is basically just an inside zone to the left. You have him lined up at the 4-eye technique, so he's on the inside shoulder of the right tackle. And he just basically gets across the face of Joe Alt here, and he's able to work kind of – Joe Alt can't get that reach block on him, and then he basically stops the running back in the backfield, and his hands are so violent. He's really good with his eyes, and I noticed with Christian Wilkins in this game, he's going to stack the lineman and kind of bench press him, and then his eyes immediately find the running back. And then when he sees the cutback, he just sheds that guy and violently gets off the lineman's block and then makes the tackle. So in the run game, if you have him and Max Crosby to the same side, it's going to be very tough for teams to run there. Now, obviously, they had some issues here on 3 big runs in the game. We can talk about what happened on those later. But for the most part, the Raiders' run defense held up. But it still can't be where you can't give up 2 or 3 big explosive runs. But for the most part, they did a fairly good job.
Yeah. And I think in this game, it's kind of like the situation where I was in a space after the game and I used a baseball analogy of like your pitcher is pitching great and you just end up with a bunch of innings, the first 3 or 4 innings where you have the bases loaded. or with nobody out, a runner at third base with less than 2 outs, and you don't get those guys home. It kind of felt that way in the first half. The Raiders did not score and not take advantage of their defense playing really well. I think they got cost. They cost themselves a couple of points by going for it deep in their own end when the other team was when the Chargers were struggling. Thoughts about the way the Raiders started, because I think that's where it really lost them the game, is the way they started offensively in this ballgame by not putting up points. It could have been easily 14-0, 17-3 at the half.
Yeah, when you dominate a team, and let's be fair, the Raiders dominated the first half of that game with their defense. The Chargers offense was 0 for 7 on first downs. They had 83 yards. They couldn't run the ball. They weren't having any success in the passing game. But at that point, the offense has to take over and give them a cushion and create some separation, 2 scores, 14-3, 17-3, something like that. And then what you can't have happen, obviously, is the turnover by Minshew. 2-minute drill. You're going to get the ball back to start the second half. You have a chance to go down and make this a 10-3, 14-3 game. Unfortunately, it was a miscommunication with Devontae Adams. It was a quick read where he's expecting Adams immediately just to be like a smoke screen. Like, as soon as the ball's high, turn around, you see Adams actually works up the field 2 or 3 yards before he looks. Minshew wants to throw it right away, and he can't because Adams isn't ready for the ball yet, and he tries to hold on to it. And unfortunately for the Raiders, it goes backwards. He tried, he ran after it, he tried to knock it out of bounds. He couldn't get there. And that swung the game 7-6 when the Raiders should have been up at least 10-3. You would like to see them sustain a drive or 2 more in the first half, maybe 13 or 17, like I said. You just can't let teams hang around in the National Football League. And the Raiders did that. They let the Chargers hang around. Daniel Carlson misses the field goal in the second half with a chance to go up 10-9. And boom, the next thing you know, the touchdown, and then they're down 2 scores. They're down 9 points. So the Raiders couldn't run the football in the first half, and that was an issue. And they were facing a lot of 3rd and longs, 3rd and mediums. Antonio Pierce deciding to go for it on 4th and 1 at his own 40-yard line. I don't know if you should do that in game 1 of the first game of the season in the first quarter when your defense is literally swarming and dominating. You're basically handing the other team 3 points. When you know that your offense is going to struggle to score points, because that's what they were bad in the preseason. They were bad in practices. Everything we saw, I was at a practice where it was bad. You just can't give teams points. If you want to play the style that AP wants to play, and that's control the ball, run the ball, kick field goals, play field position, you cannot hand the other team points.
And that was the contradiction. It was like, we're going to run the football, we're going to play defense, we're going to do all these things that 3 yards in a cloud of dust, but then on your own 40-yard line, you're going for a 4th and 1, and you don't get it. And then instead of trusting your special teams and your defense to kind of ride this whole thing out. I mean, I think that point you should have it wasn't like they were facing. Sometimes you do things like that if you're facing Peyton Manning, or if you're facing like a really great offensive team. You're like, yo,
Patrick Mahomes.
Like you just say, screw it. We need points today. Like we can't play games. We got to score. But in this situation, it was definitely primed to bring out AJ Cole for the punt, because they weren't doing anything offensively. Pin them back, and it's only the first half. You don't want to. You don't want to lose a game in the first half. And I think that's the biggest thing the Raiders did in this game with that move and not being able to score. Ryan, they kind of lost this. They pretty much lost this game in the first half.
Yeah, when they couldn't create separation. I think the bigger issue for me isn't that they went for it. It's that Trey Tucker actually got the first down.
Yeah.
By a half a yard. It was a very bad spot. There was no one upstairs telling AP, hey, challenge us, we got it. Or, there was no inclination to, hey, maybe we had the first down and let's try that. And if we didn't get it, then we'll decide what to do. Give you more time to think about it. But they would have won that challenge if they threw it. So it's kind of like a game management thing in there where someone should have alerted AP that, hey, you need to challenge this spot, because I went back and watched it 2 or 3 times. They need to get to the 42. Trey Tucker's hips were at the 42. So literally when he's laying down, the ball is past the 42.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they lost this when they just literally couldn't move the ball in the first half, and then every time they got to midfield, something bad happened, which wasn't that often. But they, to me, the bigger issue in this is you have a new offensive coordinator, Lou Getza. You had all off season to prepare for this. Like, you had nothing up your sleeve for 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 4th and 1. There was no wrinkle. There was nothing. So that's a bigger thing to me, where they just said, hey, we're just going to put our big boy pants on and run the ball. And then you see Andre James get destroyed and Colton Miller misses a block. And the next thing you know, you're handing the other team 3 points.
So it's with all that being said, I think my situation, these are the most common situations that causing decisions that coaches have to make. So when you have, isn't Joe Philbin part of the staff still? I mean, like, it's a piece of people. You got Philbin, you got Marvin Lewis, you got John Coughlin. Like,
he's not technically, but there was video last week of him basically giving a speech to the team at the facility.
Yeah, and I think if you're gonna have all those people in there, and they're not just grifters trying to get that last check from the Raiders, like what do you like? If your AP is like, I'm concerned, is like, why aren't you more prepared for those moments? Because that's your job to do this on the fly. Like, I mean, anybody can do it later on, but like, you have to be able to do it on the fly. And I think that's the thing that really bothered me about him and his like his lack of ability to do this as the game is going on, where, you know, the consequences could have changed the Raiders' fortunes dramatically.
So yeah, I think AP's decision making is something that we saw down the stretch last year in that 9 games where he was the interim, where there was some questionable decisions as far as in-game management, end of half, end of game, when to call timeout, when to challenge. And it's something we even saw in the preseason. And to AP's credit, he brought up, Matt Sheldon. He hired him as a game consultant that he leans on. But there was still some questionable stuff going on in the preseason and now here. So he had numerous opportunities on 4th down in this game, and he kind of got gun shy because he went for it when he shouldn't have. And then later in the game, he had a 4th and 1, and he kicked the field goal down 16-7 to make it 16-10. I'm kind of okay with that one because you made it a one score game. But when you're at the 7-minute mark and you have the ball at the 43-yard line and you're kind of moving the ball a little bit there, and you've moved it a little bit better in the second half, you can't get a yard. You don't have one play that you could dial up where, like, there's nothing where you have in the playbook where I can get a ball to Devontae or, misdirection, rollout. And you see like, it saddens me to say this, but I watched the 49ers game last night. How many times did we see outside zone bootleg where the quarterback rolls out and there's no one within 10 yards of him where he can run? You have crossing routes, you have over routes where he can get the ball there. And I was hoping to see a lot more of that in this offense to play off that outside run. We didn't really see them move Gardner Minshew. He was basically a pocket passer in this game. So that's something I would question about Getsy. But AP is paid to make these decisions.
I thought Getsy liked quarterbacks who could run.
We'll see. And then it's surprising. I don't know if you saw the numbers of the personnel usage. They used more 11 than 12. And like, like I saw where Michael Mayer only played 34 snaps. And you really didn't see them in 12 very much. Yeah. You didn't really see them take advantage of having both of those guys in the roster. So as much as I love Brock Bowers, if the whole offseason was, we're going to take this guy and play 12 personnel, and you're going to have to match up with us, and you're going to have to guard Mayer and Bowers, like, they didn't really do that in the first game.
Yeah, you kind of, the way they even put the depth chart out with Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers on it, you were like, you would say, okay, the Raiders are going to dictate terms to teams, like, but they didn't do that at all. And like, I mean, like, also 11 personnel, they were 73%. 12 personnel, they were 12%, and then 13 personnel, they were 5%. So it wasn't the tight end takeover. It wasn't Gronk and Hernandez, like, like maybe some folks thought. It was like that. It wasn't like that at all. And I just, so both you and I watched this game on All 22. What were your kind of your over-undering kind of like things about Getsy? Like, it seemed like it seems like what I thought it was going to be in between the 20s, a play here, a play there that looked nice. But when it came down to scoring time, he wasn't going to, he really didn't come through. I mean, if Alexander Madison doesn't hit the triangle button at the right time, the Raiders might not have a touchdown in this game.
Yeah, the scoring time I have a question because they ran one play in the red zone. They didn't even
Yes.
really get to the red zone, but I thought the passing game was underwhelming. When I watched it, it was a lot of really short, quick routes, a lot of guys fairly close to each other. You know, I even put a clip out where three guys they ran trips to the right and they ran three curls. Like they're all right next to each other. Like you don't really have to space the defense. And what you saw the Chargers do a lot of is they played a lot of zone. They played a lot of cover too. And you have those five underneath defenders, and you're
Yeah.
just running a bunch of stuff within 5 to 6 yards of the line of scrimmage. There's really nowhere for those guys to go. There's nowhere for the quarterback to really throw the ball. They didn't really run a lot of vertical routes. Like they didn't have like a clear out guy doing cardio like Gruden would do, and like have a guy pull this guy out of there and try to open up holes. It was literally like I felt like Tom Brady should have been running this offense based on how they run it, because if you had to guess pre-snap, okay, here's my read, cover two, these five guys are here, I have these three routes and these two routes, and you had to pick your matchup, and if that didn't win right away, the offensive line didn't hold up either. So
Yeah.
it was really tough because I thought we were going to see more movement. I thought we were going to see the tight ends more involved. I thought we were going to see Brock Bowers be way more involved. Devontae Adams, and I granted they weren't getting first down, so it's not like they ran 70 plays, but like Devontae Adams gets 2 targets on one drive, and then he disappears for 3 series, and he gets a target here, and then he gets a couple targets late. It's like they should be throwing the ball to Devontae Adams every third or fourth play.
Yeah.
He should be really involved in this game, and you just turn the TV on and you watch other teams. Like Cooper Kupp gets 21 targets. Like we can't find a way to like get Devontae Adams 10, 12 targets. And I know people are going to scream, well, they're going to overfeed Devontae next game. Devontae Adams is a Hall of Famer. You should overfeed him. I would rather throw the ball to Devontae Adams because let's be honest, the Chargers weren't doubling him in this game. They weren't doing a lot of exotic coverages like you saw teams do in the past to him. They were basically treating him like just another wide receiver on the field, and the Raiders didn't take advantage of that. And they really didn't get Brock Bowers involved until the second half, when it was probably a little too late. So I like spreading the ball around to everyone, but you still have to feed your guys. And when AP took this team over last year, he said, "I'm going to give the ball to 17. I'm going to give the ball to 8. Those are my best 2 players." Well, AP, now that you're the head coach, your best 2 players are 17 and 89. You should give the ball to those guys too.
I mean, the whole offseason, we kind of thought this was going to be a situation where it was going to be Adams, Bowers, Adams, Bowers, Adam Bauer, Adam Bowers, and we didn't really get that. And I just wonder. I mean, this is the part of the thing where, like, people criticize us or whatever, and I was just like, hey, if you're going to hire AP, fine, but when there was a surprising number of individuals who had a lot of success in the National Football League, just give them just have an interview. Like, you don't got to interview Leslie Frazier or Chris Richard. Those guys aren't serious candidates. It's okay to have AP in your back pocket and say, hey, AP, we're gonna. But like, if you want to go ahead and interview somebody who has more experience, just to even Al Davis should do it just to pick their brain and get ideas. Like, I mean, those are the kind of things that I kind of wanted to see, because I just feel like at this, during games, his decision making is one of somebody who looks like they're a little bit overwhelmed with all that goes on, and you don't want to feel that way about your head coach, but that's the way people feel about the Raiders head coach right now. The running game, it was supposed to be ground and pound. We got Zamir for 3.4. We got Madison for 3.8. One of the biggest reasons why one of the biggest things we didn't like about this. I mean, I don't know how you felt, but how I felt was like, I don't mind having a power back, but I also like to have a guy who has some giddy up, where like a swing pass can end up being a touchdown, or like any kind of running play could be. He has a guy, his ability to maybe go for 50, 60 yards. Zamir White had a fumble in this ball game too, as well, which was terrible for this team. Did you see anything in the run game that made you feel like they can improve upon that as they hit the ball some more?
I think the issue with the run game, I think early in the season, trying to implement this outside zone scheme, it relies a lot on the offensive linemen being on the same page, taking their steps together, taking the right angles. It's going to take time. It's not surprising they didn't hit the ground running with the running game, but at the same time, like, having said that, Cody Whitehair was not very good. You saw Colton Miller looked really rusty, gave up 2 sacks, missed some blocks in the run game. I thought Andre James, and I know people were coming at me on Twitter or X saying, I don't know what I'm looking at, but Andre James probably had his worst game that I can remember in a while for the Raiders. And that's saying a lot because there's been plenty of games where I've watched the All-22 and I've questioned Andre James as a long-term center. I almost got to the point today where I was going to put together 6 or 7 clips of him basically tripping over himself, completely whiffing up blocks, not getting to guys. And I thought, you know what, that's not fair to Andre. I'm not going to put it out there. But if you want to watch, everyone find access to the All-22, get NFL Plus Premium, you can watch it. Andre James had a horrible game as a run blocker. And when you have that guy in the middle of the line and you're trying to line up and you have 2 new guys, you have Dylan Parham. Dylan Parham was okay, like, as a right guard. There was snaps where he wasn't very good. And I thought the best guy that played, I thought Munford had the best game of anyone on the line, which is encouraging. That it looks like he's making that step to where he can be counted on as a starter. But you shouldn't have questions. You just re-signed Andre James when you had other options. You drafted JPJ, who I know is hurt, and you had Dylan Parham, who you could have moved inside. But until this offensive line gets on the same page and they can open up holes consistently, and to your point, not sure that either one of these running backs is really an outside zone type running back. These are bigger guys, stronger guys, or they look like they're more power runners. Like they don't have that shifty guy or that put the foot in the ground, one cut, get north and south guy like you saw with Mason with the 49ers. So I don't know if there's a back on this roster that really fits the style of offense they're trying to run. Now, Zamir White can do it. But we had a lot of questions about the running back room coming into the season. That kind of played itself out. When Zamir White, that fumble, you can't do that. Like, he wasn't even hit that hard. They kind of just poked at it and knocked it out. You're a 230-pound guy that goes by the name of Zeus. You can't have a little DB just like pop the ball out as you're running down the field. I think you're going to see it, hopefully, Dylan Lobby at some point get some plays. I was surprised they didn't have like a wrinkle for McAllister. You know, he's played running back and slot receiver, and he made this team. Like, he didn't have a play here or there. We could try to just give him the ball in space and see what he can do. The creativity or lack of creativity from Getsy's offense was kind of disturbing. I know it's week 1. I know he's a new offense coordinator. You didn't name the starting quarterback till 2 weeks ago, but you just really didn't see anything. It looked like some random dude just playing Madden calling plays. There was no rhyme or reason. They weren't really setting anything up. So it was a divisional game. They should have been game planning for this since they were hired. When they got the schedule in April, you should have started 2 or 3 weeks ago in training camp, like installing some stuff specifically for this game. And it looked like they were just calling plays and trying to find something that might work. And that doesn't work in the National Football League.
Yeah. Some questions here. Dave from the 718 he has some laughing emojis and said, "Is it over already?" I mean, the season is the season. Yes, I think it's going to be. They have, in order for them to get to a certain point here, they have to maybe upset a team like Baltimore to get people excited again. Like, I mean, it's gonna be hard to do. I think they're 10-point underdogs in that game already, so we'll have to see what happens there. But like, you know, we kind of went into the season thinking that 7, 8, 9 was the number as far as win total goes. So it all depends on where your perspective was.
Yeah, asking if it's over. Like, are they asking me if I think they're going to win the division? I don't think they're going to win the division.
No.
I never thought they were going to win the division. Do I think they're a playoff team? No, I never thought they were a playoff team. I wouldn't say over. Like, if they can find a way, even if they don't win this week, they have winnable games coming up. They have a home game against the Panthers. The Browns didn't look very good. The Steelers looked okay, but that's a team you can beat. Like, and then I think you have the Broncos, like the next 4 after that. So you can still get to 3-3. Like, there's an outside chance at 4-2, even if you lose this week. The problem is the middle of that schedule.
Yeah,
you're gonna run into some powerful teams. So like, the first 6 weeks, they have to get to 3-3 if they want any chance of making the playoffs. I think as long as this defense plays, if this defense plays like it did for the first 2.5, 3 quarters, they can win any game. The thing with this defense, the next step is they're going to have to start creating turnovers.
Yeah,
we can stop these teams and get 3 and outs and have them punt, or 5 or 6 plays punt. But like, until they start creating turnovers and scoring on defense, that's the next step they're going to have to take. So we were waiting for that big turnover to happen. Unfortunately for the Raiders, they turned it over 3 times, and they didn't create any on defense, and that was the difference in the game.
Yeah, Ryan wants to know: do we see anything that can? Do we see anything that can? Any optimism for the running game in the future?
I think you can. I mean, I think once you get JPJ back, I think once Colton Miller gets a couple games, gets his pads under him, I think as Dylan Parham makes that transition back to right guard, I was encouraged by Mumford. I think if you start doing more 12 personnel and just start expanding some of the types of runs, um, there were some runs that were good. I liked how they used motion to kind of get the tight end working to that backside end when they ran some split zone. So that was good. So there's some signs. The problem is this team's built, and AP wants to, where they think they can just line up and run the ball 30 times for 150 yards and just control the game. This offensive line is not there yet, but give them. I hate to say this, but give them 4 or 5 weeks. Let's see what this team looks like in weeks 6, 7, and 8 running the football. It's really hard to judge them early. They played.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Like, they played a pretty good defense. Like, those interior guys that the Chargers brought in, Puna Ford, Agbuna, I think his name was. Obviously, Max, a good run defender, and Bosa played pretty well. So we'll see what it looks like going forward. But they're going to have to get some explosive runs. And not sure that either guy they have is really going to be a guy that can get big explosives. Zamir White hopefully can.
Yeah.
And then get creative with the run game. I don't know why this just popped in my head, but with all the dudes on the roster, Luke Getsy, like, I think it was the second series of the game, calls a reverse to Jacoby Myers and runs like a 4.7. Like, he's the slowest dude on your team.
Yeah.
Why are you calling a reverse for 3 yards to the slowest dude on your team? I don't get that.
That's crazy.
You have DJ Turner, you have McAllister, you have Turner, Tucker. Like, you have guys that can run. You have Bowers who can run. Like, give it to guys that can run.
Makes sense. Sarah from Modesto wants to know about she was concerned about Devontae's comments about I'm just here to run routes. And for me, it's like, it is almost like you kind of felt like the players begged to have Antonio Pierce to be their head coach. Hinting that, like, some people hinting that they didn't want to be here if he wasn't going to be the head coach. And now at the first sign of danger, it looks like people are kind of backtracking and not going all in and supporting the guy. So, and I can see how you can get that from the post game interview after that game. Devontae's just going to be Devontae. He's going to work hard. He's going to do everything he can to get open. He's going to do everything he can to do his part. But he's in a situation where he's in a dependent position because he has OC and a quarterback who have to give him the football. So, but at the end of the day, I think it could have been a stronger response of backing Antonio Pierce, I thought, in the end of the game, but that is what it is.
I will say this: when I saw the interview after the game, it did concern me to this point where he's the leader of the offense. He's the face of the Raiders offense. I would have been better off if he made comments like, you know what, we need to do a better job as an offense not to put the coach in that position. We need to convert. We need to do this. We need to get it on the 3 downs we're given. We're going to do what we can to make the corrections. We'll look at the tape. I did catch his interview today with Kay Adams, and she asked him about that. And he basically said the competitor of him wanted to go for it, but it's not basically his decision to make. That's the coach's decision to make. Mm-hmm. So he kind of said, you know what, I did want to go for it. He kind of talked about it today, this morning. If you just go to YouTube, look up Kay Adams, he was on today. So he showed a little bit more like, yeah, we probably should have, or I would have gone for it. But, in the moment losing that game in the locker room, he probably said something he shouldn't have. But that's Devontae. He's going to say that. And he was kind of like that last year. And the disturbing part, as you mentioned, was he was one of the guys that said, I want AP. And then Luke Getsy's his guy. Yeah. Luke Getsy was his position coach with the Packers that he's known. And there's no way that hire didn't happen without Devontae at least bringing his name up or talking to AP about it behind the scenes. Hey, I know it didn't work out with Cliff Kingsbury, but let's talk to this guy, Luke Getsy. So Devontae definitely had input on that. I did want to push back a little bit. I mentioned that I tweeted out after the game that on AP's handpicked offense coordinator. Let's get this. Let's just set the record straight. AP hired Luke Getsy. It doesn't matter if he was first, second, third, fourth, eighth, 12th. He hired him. They're connected. Their jobs are intertwined. It doesn't matter where on the list he was. And all the people that were coming out on Twitter and at Raider Nation saying, well, he was the fourth, fifth, eighth guy. We don't know that. We don't know that they had interest in Zach Robinson because Zach Robinson never interviewed with him, and he went with Raheem Morris the minute he got the job in Atlanta. We don't know. We know they requested to interview Clint Kubiak, but they didn't make that request until the NFC Championship week. Yeah. When he'd already basically interviewed twice with the Saints, and the Saints didn't hire him until after the Super Bowl. Or it might have been right before, but it was during that Super Bowl week or shortly thereafter. AP had plenty of time to talk to Clint Kubiak if he wanted him. Yeah. So I don't think he was the third option. It really sounds like it was, and honestly, I think what happened, and this is just reading the tea leaves with the report that came out at the time about Cliff Kingsbury not wanting a 2-year deal. Well, that makes sense right now because now we know AP's on a 2-year deal. And Cliff Kingsbury's like, I'm not going there if he's on a 2-year deal and then have a bad year and he gets fired in a year. Like, I'm not, they don't have a quarterback. Like, I completely understand if AP's on a 2-year deal, why Cliff Kingsbury said no. So we can't blame Kingsbury on backing out if that's really what happened. We know AP's on a 2-year deal, and we know by reports that Cliff Kingsbury was offered a 2-year deal. So obviously Mark Davis isn't going to offer the offensive coordinator a longer contract than the head coach. And then basically if you got to the point where you interviewed and you got offered the job and you started really talking about the details and it's like, hold on, like he's only got a 2-year deal and you're only offering me a 2-year deal. Yeah, I'm going to go over here to Washington where they're going to give me something better. Exactly. And they have the second pick in the draft. So I wouldn't say Cliff Kingsbury backed out. They may have had a meeting and he was like, yeah, I'm very interested in this job. But until the contract signed, he didn't back out.
Yeah, 100%. And then that and the fact that that was your Twitter thing. My Twitter thing was like, no more. Like, if you're tweeting about Derek Carr, like I just don't. I'm cousin. Like, this ain't a show for it. Like look. I would say look within if you're still tweeting about Derek Carr. As far as that is, Dean. Rex wants to know about what would Andre James have to do to actually get replaced.
Keep playing like he's playing.
keep playing like he's playing. And then Dean wants to know, is Joe Alt the dominant force that Charger social media has him out to be?
I'll say this: Joe Alt had a very good game.
He's good. He's a good player.
Joe Alt was only matched up with Max Crosby. I think it was 9 times. Yeah. Might have been 9 or 11. One site said 11, another said 9. A lot of times Max Crosby was on the other side. A lot of times they ran games where Max Crosby is lined up over Alt, but he comes inside on a TE stunt, comes wide, comes through and hits the quarterback. That doesn't count against Joe Alt. Having said that, they were never in a position where the Chargers were dropping back 5-7 step drops and throwing the ball down the field and giving the rushers time to get there. Everything was quick. The ball was out of Herbert's hand. It's really hard to give up pressures when the quarterback's getting rid of the ball in 2.2 seconds. I will say, no, he's not his daddy. But at the same time, Joe Alt is going to be a very good NFL player.
Yeah, he will. I think so too. And I mean, as far as Andre James goes, like I said, there are enigmas that happen in sports that are beyond our realm, that where there's certain people who stay on your team no matter how many times you change coaches. And the Raiders, and since the time we have done this show, we've seen a lot of turnover at head coach, and who knows, we might see another. I mean, because if this thing blows up this year, AP is probably not going to come back next year. But I don't know how people like Andre James or other people like that just end up staying on the roster. Like, and I don't understand. Like, I guess really, like I guess the Dolphins were really hot and heavy for him, and I just don't understand. Like, I mean, because I was talking to a guy who I know out there, and I'm like, and he was asking me about Andre James. I was like, I wish I would just take him. I wish they would just like make him the highest paid center and just blow the offer out the door. Because I just don't see why. I mean, I remember back in the day when he had the fluttering snaps, Derek Carr, and the ball was like going like taking forever to
Those
get back
look
to the
better.
quarter.
I mean, he's improving his snapping, so I guess we can say that.
The snaps have gotten better, no question about it. But everything else, man, he just gets pushed around. I mean, I just feel like that's the tough position to play. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not trying to say that anybody can be a center, but geez, I mean, it was rough watching him. It's really rough watching him as far as that is. It's just
Yeah. My
it's
hope
hard
for
to
him was
watch.
to switch to this outside zone scheme,
Would
would
help.
free him up more to use some of his athleticism. And then when I turn the tape on, he's tripping over himself. He's tripping over the guard. He's not getting to the second level. And it's like, well, he
This
can't
is
handle bigger guys on the inside. He's not
yeah.
good with stunts. And now he's not really showing much in the outside zone game. Like, I don't really know what he does. Like, he's a serviceable player. Like, he should be on NFL roster, but like, to pay this guy $8 million a year and give him a 3-year deal. Now, essentially, it's a 1-year deal. They can get out of it after this year, but like, you have better options on your own roster. Dylan Parham is a better option at center, but I know that would open up right guard. But like, they could have gone other routes to fill that position. They have Andres Pete, who they can put over there. They have. I'm not going to say Cody White here. I think the injury here to JPJ, to Jackson Powers Johnson, is really slowing down the offensive line. They need him. They need
Yeah.
him in there. And it wouldn't surprise me by the end of the year if he was playing some center.
So every year, and I think the last thing we'll go over too is every year you have a position group that kind of gets attacked by injuries. Looks like defensive end is that position now. No Raider fans, whatever his face is not the answer. I forgot his name. Who used to be here. Everybody's begging for him to come back.
I think Ngakwe.
And Ngakwe is not the answer. So talking about that, they did pick up Kason. So we'll see if that they can get anything out of him. But what do you do in this situation here with the Raiders? I mean, like, you just gotta just hope Janoris Robinson and the people you have in house, because nobody's gonna give you a big time pass rusher right now as far as to help your team go ahead and do some things. So
I think this really depends on the injury to Malcolm Koonce. By some reports, it's season ending. Some other reports say 2 to 4 weeks. So if let's just say it's 4 to 5 weeks,
yeah,
you really don't want to go out and spend money on a top tier guy and bring him in, because then what do you do when like Koonce comes back? Because he's shown that he can be a starter. So Tyree Wilson's probably in the same boat. A knee sprain is probably in the 3, 4, 5 week range. So you need someone that can come in the short term, but long term, this probably isn't an issue. So you don't want to go spend $10 million on Yannick Ngakoue and bring him in, and then what do you do with him in a month?
yeah.
And he's not very good against the run either. I was really surprised that Patrick Graham, who ran a ton of nickel last year, that was their base defense. They ran over 50% of their snaps in base defense, and they had a lot where they had 5 down linemen, where Max Crosby was playing an outside linebacker, and you actually saw Charles Snowden playing an outside linebacker. You saw him off the line of scrimmage. You saw him in coverage. So you saw them be versatile with him. I think for now, you have enough to get through the next 3 or 4 games. And that's if you put Max Crosby, you have Jenkins, you have Butler, who can line up and play defensive end in a 4-man front if you need him to. You have Wilkins, obviously. The problem's going to be in the pass rush. I don't think it's an issue stopping the run. The issue is going to be, you're really going to need Max Crosby, and you're really going to need Christian Wilkins to basically take over the pass rush and give it to you every down. It's going to be tough for those guys to do it with how much they play and how many snaps. And I was shocked when I was turning on the film, and Christian Wilkins is on one side of the field, and at the end of the play, he's all the way on the other side of the field, sprinting across the field on a 2-yard ball in the flat. Like, this dude was everywhere.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can play 17 games with that motor. Like, Max Crosby can, but Wilkins weighs 320 pounds. Like, he's a much bigger animal. So we'll see what happens there. I think what you'll end up doing is you'll have Janoris Robinson split snaps. You'll have obviously Snowden. I don't expect him to play this type of defense the rest of the year. I think this was the matchup with Harbaugh, and we want to run the football, and they don't really have anything outside. I think you're going to go back to more of the nickel defense we saw them run a lot last year. There was plenty of times where they ended up putting Nate Hobbs was a nickel linebacker. So they'd have the 5 down, and then you'd still have Spillane and Hobbs behind him, and then you'd have the 2 other corners, obviously, and the 2 safeties. So they had Polamalu in there for a couple of plays. So they have some pieces to work with. I would if they get into a game that's a shootout and they get at a team that wants to throw the ball 40 times a game, I think that's where the problem's going to show up because they just don't have the consistent wave of passers. But I don't think you have to worry about that with the Ravens, the Panthers, and potentially the Browns coming up, and then the Steelers, and even the Broncos. I don't think that becomes an issue if those guys are out and they can't play, and you don't have Wilson or Kuntz for 8 weeks, and then you're playing Kansas City and Miami, and then that's where the issue is going to show up.
Yeah. Yep. So the Raiders take their lumps in LA, where they 0-5 now with fans in that building. So it's I've been
why I don't go.
Yes, it is.
Until they win a game at SoFi, I'm not paying the prices to go there.
Yeah, I went to the game where they almost came back, and they were down 21-0, came back and came back to make it close against and with Gruden. I think they lost that game.
I was at that game.
You was at that game?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was at that game. So I really thought when Carr hit the bomb to Ruggs, I was like, oh, we're really gonna come back and win this game, and this, of course not.
And then I think Renfro scored too in the second half.
Yeah. So yeah. They still.
And then Carr threw the interception to Derwin James and was throwing it to Waller, and that's when I left.
Yes. Yeah. And then I got sick from the food, so I'm lying on the floor on the shuttle back to the car. I had to drive holding my stomach driving back to Southern California, so it was nuts. But they haven't won there. One more chance to win there when they face the Rams later on this year. But it feels like you lost 2 games when you lose to a division rival. So it's a tough situation for the Raiders as far as that goes. But next week we'll be here to preview the Ravens. The Ravens had a little bit of time to prepare for this game. They're probably angry that they couldn't win that game in Kansas City. They were close, but it's gonna be a tough job. That's the one where for the Carr folks, that's the one team that he balled out against. He balled out consistently against the Ravens. It's going to see if the Raiders can pull off an upset of huge proportions next week against the Baltimore Ravens.
Did you see the comment by John Harbaugh? I think it was on Monday when they asked him about all the illegal formation penalties that got called against Ronnie Stanley.
What did he say?
He said, and I'll paraphrase, I don't have it in front of me, but basically said the league was out to get them. They have the chips in the shoulder pads so they can track where they lined up. And he said, we know exactly where our guys lined up and we know exactly where their guys were lining up. And he made a comment. So I would be very, very careful going into this game next week to see if they keep calling these illegal formation penalties, or they start calling a couple on the Raiders to make up for some of the calls they called against the Ravens last week.
I was not aware that they had so there's chips in the shoulder pads of these players.
He said they have tracking chips in the shoulder pads that show basically where they're lined up versus to where the ball is. And he said they have that data, and we know exactly where we lined up, and we know where they lined up. He was very adamant, hey, we didn't do anything they weren't doing, but you didn't call it on them.
Well,
he said it very diplomatically, without saying you guys are frauds.
Exactly. So from one Harbaugh to another, that's the way this travel. So, all right, Ryan, take care, brother. Thank you.
All right, no worries.
All right, go Raiders.